Good morning from Vietnam, Maya. Good evening to you. Thanks a lot for spending your evening to join our Inside Sharing show and share your stories with our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners of the show, we want to say thank you to you and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And I would like to say a Happy New Year to your audience members and listeners.
Wonderful. Maya, you've been traveling to many parts of the world, but not my country. So the next time that you travel to Vietnam, please let us know you have a new friend, a new family now, right?
Thank you so much. I would love to visit Vietnam. I read a lot about Vietnamese history, and I love Vietnamese food. And the closest, it's not really close, but the closest I've been is I went to Bali. So maybe not next time I go somewhere in Asia, I will definitely make a stop in Vietnam. I would love to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And since you know you have some sense about our culture, it's very honor for our audience to have you to introduce a little bit about who you are and the works that you do. Could you please do that for us?
Sure. Well, I'm currently a dean of the Forbes School of Business and Technology here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So my main job is that of a dean. I'm overseeing all the academic activities within our college, all the programs, all the curriculum development and improvement, managing our wonderful faculty members, full-time and part-time faculty members, managing the affiliation with Forbes Media, because we're affiliated with Forbes Media, and also our affiliation with the University of Arizona. So that is in a nutshell my main job. I'm also a Fulbright specialist. I've done different research ventures in the developing world. I was part of several different grant-sponsored research ventures in Africa, in Middle East, Europe, Caribbean, and of course here in the United States. I'm a lecturer, a global lecturer and researcher, and I was published in 20 plus, 25 plus academic journals. I lost count. I'm also an author of the book on the perception and co-author and co-creator of the Perception Index.
Wow, wow.
So
Maya.
that's me in a nutshell.
And then you've been recognized as one of the top 100 inspirational leaders, right? And we really congratulate all of the amazing achievement that you've been having so far. So this conversation, we're gonna explore your journey together. Is that okay? We travel time together.
Yeah, absolutely. I love time travel. Yes.
Okay, so when I was young, Maya, I always wanted to become an astronaut, wearing the
Right.
suit and jumping different planet. But life didn't give me any chance to do the work that I love to do. So I wanted to understand when Maya was young, what was her dream as a young child?
I had several different dreams. One of those dreams, I want to be a librarian because I love to read, and I was always looking at those ladies that were working in the libraries, and I thought they were the happiest ladies in the universe because of the fact they can read as many books as they want to read. I also had a very unique dream that is that job does not exist anymore. I'm going to take you way back. You said time travel. Back in the day, in the 70s, they had usually good-looking ladies that were announcing TV program. So basically, they would come online and they would actually say, "So we're gonna have news at 7 p.m. We're gonna have cartoon at So I'm really dating myself. We only had 2 to 3 channels at the time, too, when I was growing up. So I spent hours practicing in front of the mirror, being a program announcer. So I literally wanted to be a program announcer. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore. We have hundreds of channels that everyone can pull online as to what they're going to watch, and we have all these streaming services. But that was my big dream. I wanted to be one of them, and I wanted to. They were always dressed up really nice, and they were very beautiful, and I just wanted to be them. I was a little girl that was my dream. Nothing as special as being an astronaut. I'm afraid.
So the TV program announcer or a librarian. So those dreams happened when you were in the States or before you were in the States?
Oh, that was when I was growing up. I grew up in former Yugoslavia, so I actually that was way back in Yugoslavia. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tell us how the journey that leading to from there when you travel to the States, and how's the dream change after that?
Well, I grew up in former Yugoslavia, Bosnia, currently Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm from Sarajevo, and I lived with my parents and grandparents up until the point of time when the war started. And I had a period of time that I spent in a refugee camp in Europe. I was a refugee in Europe for 3.5 years in Austria. Then I immigrated to the United States. I came here as a refugee as well. So I was legally in a refugee status for several years of my life. And then I settled in the United States in 1996. So I came here as a refugee, and I started fresh.
Wow. And then, how life moving for you from what the country name? Yugoslavia, right?
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia. Okay, and then move
Yeah.
to the States, a totally different culture and everything. So how does start fresh from the beginning start for you?
Well, the cultural shock or change of culture started taking place while I was still in Europe, because I went from the former Yugoslavia. Currently, the name of the country is Bosnia. I'm from Bosnia, and I went to Austria. I had a brief period of time where I lived in Holland. So I went back from Holland to Austria. So I already changed a few different countries in Europe. And that was a cultural change, first and foremost. Coming from the Southeast, East Europe to a Western Europe, went through the trauma of war that many Vietnamese that are a bit older are very much sadly familiar with. Going through the war trauma, then going through the refugee camp trauma. So by the time I settled in the United States, I was so ready to embrace a new life. I was so ready I was ready to be happy, for the lack of better words. And that process, having gone through that a few years of leaving my culture, getting to know different cultures, it appeared to me, at least on the surface level, that becoming bicultural in the United States was fairly easy for me.
And then how the journey took place after that?
Well, I went through the typical immigrant journey. I went through different odd jobs. At first, I was working at a warehouse. I was going to this high school at night, and I was continuing to learn English. And then I was usually working 2-3 jobs. That's one of the constants in my life, that I was always doing several different things. And then I resumed my studies in the United States. First, I went to university in Austria, actually, from the refugee camp. I was one of the first refugees that got a grant, and I was able to study in Austria. And then I continued my studies here in the United States. Shortly thereafter, I got a very good job in the financial industry. I started working for the Merrill Lynch Credit Corporation. And then we started working on, within the financial industry, we worked on mortgages for different major financial players, many recognizable companies. So I was in that industry for quite some time, the entire time going to school at night. Had 2 kids in the middle of all that. So I was raising a family as well. And then ultimately, after I got my PhD, I actually worked still in the financial industry for 3 years while working teaching part-time. I've developed a love for teaching, and I realized I need to go to academia full-time. And in 2013, I made a huge gamble. At least I considered it a gamble. I left a very, very lucrative job within the industry that, my opinion, was incredibly stable at the time, for the unknown career in the world of academia. So I had a few of those did I lose my mind moments. What's happening? But I never looked back. I mean, there were so many opportunities. There were so many different wonderful things that I've discovered. Through the love of teaching, I discovered the love for research, travel. I went through so many countries doing research ventures, getting to know different people from different cultures. I'm incredibly fortunate in that regards. And that is kind of a, when you ask me what happened once I got to the United States, that's kind of a what happened throughout that journey.
When you came to the States, it was 1996, right? And then back then there was a lot of, the whole, there's a lot of things for you to learn and decide to get into a career professions back then, right? So out of, just curious, what did you choose to study at first that leading to the teaching career and the researching career later
Um,
on?
public relations
Public
and international
relations.
studies.
Ah.
So, communication, public relations, and international studies as my minor. I've never done one single day of work as a public relations specialist. However, that field alone is, I feel like everything we're doing is public relations. Even what we're doing tonight is public relations.
Yep.
Keep in mind two things that I wanted to be as a kid. One was the program announcer, and the other one was a librarian. I was constantly in a situation where I was presenting. I was not presenting, what are you going to watch next? But I was lecturing, I was engaging with the audience, I was standing in front of so many audience members. And then the librarian, of course, I'm a nerd. I'm reading all the time. Nowadays, no one's reading as much. I'm listening to a lot of books, audiobooks, and listening to documentaries and podcasts. So I do feel that when you think about your childhood dreams, there was that foundation that I didn't really abandon when you think about it.
And Maya, you were having a good job and having two kids along the way, right? So, what made you to decide to go all the way in for the PhD degree?
Oh well, I just always wanted to study and study more. No one understood that at the time. I was having a very good paying job, and I was the only one going towards a PhD within my company that I know of at the time. And people thought I was crazy, but I just had this desire, this urge. It's kind of that voice in your head. What's next? What's next? And once I finished, I was still not comfortable to leave the comfort of that job. So it's kind of funny. For the 3 years after getting my PhD, I was still at that job, but I was going into the corporate training more so, and I've developed love for teaching. And I said to myself, at the end of the day, I was just talking to you that I lost track of time, and all of a sudden here's this podcast. I lost track of time because I was working. But when you love what you do, it's not really work. It was 7 p.m. I didn't realize it was 7 p.m. So I was telling you I need to brush my hair. Oh, well, I mean, your audience is probably going to be like, well, she didn't really brush it well, but it doesn't matter. That's the best I can do right now. Okay, I was working 12 hours a day, but it doesn't feel like work.
Wow.
It feels if you do what you're passionate about, it's your mission in life. It's not work.
Yes, and Maya, there's a lot of people in life don't know what they want to do. So you've been in a very stable job. Normally, to other people, they will keep doing that job until they retire, and but then you decided to switch into a new career because you found the love for teaching and then found the love for researching, and then in that realization moment, how did you pick the glue to know that, oh, I'm starting to feel like I'm loving the job as teaching. Would you share that with us?
Well, you consistently evolve. So, for example, I through the corporate training, I discovered my love for teaching. Because at first I was in the finance industry, and then all of a sudden I started, doing different corporate trainings. So as I was standing in front of the audience, teaching them about the concepts within the world of mortgages, I've realized I would like to teach them something else. It's okay to teach them about mortgages, but I would like to teach them about business concepts, about leadership, about business ethics, so I started wanting to teach them about the things that I was learning through my studies. Of course, in the financial industry, you're not going to teach people, you're going to touch upon business communication, but you're not going to teach them those concepts. Therefore, I realized I want to do teaching. Through teaching, I've discovered love for research. So all these things, like I talk to young people quite a bit. And a lot of them come to me and they say, I'm 21, I don't know what I want to do. Well, I tend to, I don't know what I want to do still. And I talk to my friends who are 20 years older than me, and they're still growing, they're still learning. The process is constant. This notion of us having to be in one career, and basically this is it for us and we cannot switch. No, absolutely change, and it is uncomfortable to get out of your comfort level. It is scary, but once you start doing it, follow your passion. And I always tell my students, I say, try to make a change or try to make a difference within your little area of expertise, your area of influence. Don't always think big. When I started doing research, the very first conference I had was in Orlando. I live in Jacksonville. That's 2 hours away. I was not thinking about doing research in Africa at the time. I ended up doing 2 Fulbright projects. One as a co-investigator, one as the investigator in Zambia. I became a globe researcher, becoming the country co-investigator for Zambia. Of course, I knew where Zambia was, but what I'm trying to say is when I was going to that first conference in Orlando, I wasn't thinking in terms of doing research in Haiti or doing research in Jordan or doing research in Bosnia. I mean, I wasn't thinking in those terms. I was thinking about that small research project that I'm presenting in Orlando, 2 hours away from my home. I am not saying all the motivational speakers are always telling you think big. I'm not saying don't do that. Have vision board, but start making small differences in your life.
Wow. Yep.
And so those are that's very simple. It's nothing that I came up with. It's something that I live. The same thing like we have this new year, right? A lot of people ask me, well, what's your New Year's resolution? I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do end of the year reflection. It is okay to have goals. I'm not saying goals. You can have your goals, but I don't like the concept of, oh, it's a new year, I'm going to be a different person within 7 days, I'm going to lose 25 pounds, I'm going to start flying airplanes. Come on, let's think in terms of what are my career goals, what are my personal goals. But I love doing end of the year reflection, where I was as a person, where I was as a professional in January versus end of December. So that's what I tell my students. Can you make a difference within your community, within your neighborhood, within your job? What do you want to, what's your ultimate goal versus what is your immediate goal? There are certain things that I want to do this year that may not be something I will be able to accomplish this year. And it's okay. Start small, think big, but start small and build on it. One passion discovers another layers of your passion, another layers of your purpose. I wanted to be a teacher. I think I'm more of a researcher than I am a teacher right now. Not to mention, as a dean, I'm not doing much teaching at this point of time. So there's so many things. Who am I? I sometimes like to say I'm a storyteller, because I know that when I'm lecturing, when I'm talking with my audience, I engage in different stories, and people relate to those stories, and that's how you convey course concepts, and that's how you convey what you're trying to explain to your audience. So those are some of the thoughts I have.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Maya, I want to go into the book Perception, the power of perception, right? I have a lot of executive friends. By the time they retire, they have 2 things in common. The first one is they always wanted to write a book, all right, but they haven't, they yet writing one. So we always try to push them to say, hey, you can always write one. And the second one was they always wanted to start their own company when they were younger, but they did not do that also. So what take you to the journey of writing the book, The Power of Perception?
Well, I have a TED talk that I actually gave a whole story. It's I was not really venturing out to write a book. I didn't have it as one of my goals. I was doing a lot of academic articles, and I was perfectly fine with it. I had a chapter contribution, and I was fine with that. But a friend of mine, and we were actually in a situation, we were the recipients of the same message in a corporate setting. We came out of that meeting with a vastly different perception of what our managers told us. And as I mentioned during that talk was, she thought we're getting promoted. I thought we were getting fired. And a couple of times, both of us had different perceptions when it comes to certain projects, certain things in life. But this was the first time that our perception was the polar opposite, completely different. So we started joking with each other. I was saying, you're an optimist. She was telling me I'm a pessimist. And we said to ourselves, two women, equally educated, similar work circumstances, not necessarily similar upbringing, but similar work circumstances. We both worked in the same industry prior to educational industry. So we had so many similarities. How can these two women walk out of these meeting and, let's say, fairly intelligent? So it's not that we're not going to say we're the smartest ones, but we're just going to say we're fairly intelligent.
Yeah.
And we're in this meeting, and we started talking and joking, and we said, why are we thinking about what just took place so vastly differently? Why is our perception so different? And joking turns into research, and we spent years researching the topic, and we published a book and created a perception index.
Oh, wow. I all started, and let's go back to the basics, because I always wanted to go start from the basic. You guys are expert in perception. You wrote a book together on perception, so we want to know what is your definition of perception first.
Well, there's so many definitions that we gave in the book, but that's basically everything you see, everything you view, you interact, different life circumstances you go through, and what do you feel once that's happening? How do you perceive the reality? How do you perceive the world? So we started with a core question: is there such a thing as reality? And Greek philosophers, I went down that rabbit hole. She did tell me, you go there on your own, because we were doing different chapters. And all of a sudden I called her one day and I said, listen, I don't even know if there is such a thing as a reality. She's like, we're never going to finish this book. So then we agreed on the concept of business reality. Because the reason why I said what I said was, putting Greek philosophers and their research aside, you and I can go into a restaurant and we can sit together and we can have a couple fighting next to us. And we can walk away and then share that story with our other friends. We will focus on something differently. We may have we may have some similarities, but some vast differences in what we perceived. I may say that my perception is that lady is being abused. Your perception may be that this gentleman lost his cool because she was talking to, or whatever. I don't want to generalize. Whatever the case may be, and there's different research that was being done when they talk about the testimonies in court. And why the eyewitness testimonies are not reliable. Why is nowadays every single jury in the world wants to see forensic evidence, wants to see science? Well, it is for the reason. Because 7 different individuals looking at the crime may perceive something vastly differently. So the definition of what's perception, you go to the core definition of what's reality. Perception is we're processing the universe, and basically what we're doing is there's several different variables that we focused on that we're studying. It is life experiences, it is gender, cultural upbringing, culture, your native culture or the culture that you live in. Some of us are bicultural, multicultural. Then we talked about emotional intelligence. We're talking about pure intelligence. We're talking about the curiosity index. So we were talking about so many different things. And ultimately, going back to my original story, it's not scientifically proven, but it was determined as we were putting all this research together that my upbringing, my life circumstances prepared me for the worst versus Diane being more optimistic in life. So what I've heard the key words that were triggering something in me, such as in that meeting, they said there will be a drastic change. To me, in my life, change is, how in the United States, they always say, oh, change is good, embrace change. In my life, change sometimes was you lose your home, you lose your family. You are all of a sudden in this camp and you don't have, what I'm trying to say is like change for me, the word change was not good. And then also they said some of you may not like the change. So may not like the change. Again, she's hearing more responsibilities. I'm hearing we're losing our jobs. So we went, it boiled down in our case, it wasn't gender. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't emotional intelligence. It wasn't, all these different things that I talked about. In our case, it was the some semi-cultural, but a lot of it was experience, life experience, and upbringing. And that's, you bring yourself to the table, no matter the setting. You bring your bags. When people say, I love when here, especially in the Western Hemisphere, you hear, oh, it's nothing personal, it's just business.
Yeah.
I always say, it is always personal.
It is, yeah.
When you're saying that, you're dismissing everything that you bring to the table. For example, you and I are talking. I am trying to project something, because we were talking about the perception index and we were talking about the process that we go through. I am trying to convey my message to you and to your listeners, to your audience, to the best of my abilities. I am hoping that you're not only understanding the message, but that you're receiving it the way I'm intending it. I am counting on your understanding of the topic, on your emotional intelligence, on your critical thinking, to be able to receive my message in the way it was intended. A lot of times we talked about the global leadership in our book, and we talk about how this perception impacts global leadership. As I was doing research in many different countries, I noticed that one thing works for me best is to spend some time observing first. As much as I'm talking tonight, because we have to talk, it's a show, right? I'm very comfortable just spending some time observing. Because once you observe, you learn. And a lot of times when people have a misunderstanding, very rarely people have ill intentions to offend. Sometimes it's just a simple misunderstanding, and it is based on what I'm thinking I'm projecting, what I'm trying to project, and what you're receiving.
Well, Maya, when we observe and then our life experience form us, form inside of the perception of the world, and then maybe our observation will be outer, because of the perception. So how can we make sure that whatever that we perceive will be in the good side for us to support us to grow and expand, instead of be in the bad side?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we developed the book was written for the regular, quote unquote, regular audience, meaning we did a lot of research, but we didn't want to write another academic book. So it's actually a book that is geared towards current leaders or emerging leaders, or people that are not leaders at all. They're trying to polish their leadership skills. So we developed this process and the perception, part of the perception index. And basically what we've developed is this epic process of perception, steps that you're going through to be aware, to be mindful of the mechanisms that are impacting your perception. And the perception power index is actually, we're working with several different companies, and their employees are taking the perception index. They're seeing where they are, and then they're coming up with an action plan on bettering their perception, aligning it more to the concept of business reality, and actively working in bettering your perception for it to work for you versus against you. Going back to my example, I am more aware of my natural tendency that I'm trying to suppress, to fear the change, or to fear the unknown, or to think the worst in certain circumstances. Now we know why I act that way. Putting that aside, what can I do moving forward to do better? To be more open to listening, to be more open to change, and to understand that certain mechanisms that may be scary to me are actually, in a business setting, they're not scary at all. So those are the type of things that you can do. Years ago, in a business setting, I had a manager who was absolutely horrible. I'm not saying a leader. He was never a leader. He was a very bad manager. And at some point of time, all of us employees went and complained about him. They took him to a conference room. I guess they talked to him. I don't know what took place in a conference room, but I remember he was exiting the conference room and saying, "But I'm such a great manager." And I didn't think it back then. That was so many years ago. But he was completely oblivious, completely unaware how he comes across. And the first step of that epic process is evaluate. What am I projecting? Am I a different person in a professional versus personal setting? Yes, absolutely. you have some core principles in both settings, but you are more mindful of what you're doing in a different settings. What am I projecting? Am I aware? How many times you have a conflict with a person and they're really not aware how they come across? If one thing this email correspondence taught us is the way sometimes your emails, your written words are perceived is so vastly different from your intentions. So you evaluate first and foremost within your own self. What are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? And what are you trying to project?
So starting with the evaluations and then asking,
yes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Wonderful. So Maya, how long did it take you to write that book with your friend?
We were doing, I think it was, we published it at end of 2020. So it took us, I think, 3 years. Because we did a lot of research. We're both researchers. It probably would have taken us a short amount of time, but we did a lot of research, and then we were putting it together in the very easily digestible format, because we really wanted to open that book to a broad audience segment versus the world of academia. We are very mindful that sometimes the way we write for the academic articles is not the way people want to write. People want to read books. And also we were trying to give value to the companies that would like to use it, or individuals that would like to take the index and take advantage of it and better themselves, because the better perception is leading to better results at any level. And it's also basically what you're doing is your employees are becoming more effective. You're increasing your productivity. They're also more motivated. Because there's so many times when the executive leadership, they're communicating. Sometimes they're not communicating enough. Sometimes they're over communicating. But a lot of times we're not aware how our messages get across. And I'm very mindful of this now in my position of a dean. I'm very mindful of the words that I use, and I'm very mindful of how my message comes across. They are looking at me for the motivation. They're looking at me to be inspired. They're looking at me, even when some certain things are not really great, they're looking at me to provide them with a path forward and explain the why behind a certain difficult decision. So I have to be mindful of that.
Well, how can we take the assessment for both the curiosity and the perception assessments?
I will send you some links so you can share it with the audience members. The best way to do it is the book is on Amazon, but the indexes can be taken on Dr. Diane Hamilton's website. So I'll send you both links. She developed Curiosity Index on her own, and the Perception Index, we co-authored Perception Index.
Okay.
So by all means, whether it's a Curiosity Index or Perception Index, feel free to go to those sites, and I'll provide you with all the links.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And the next question is I know it's not going to be fair for you, Maya, but if in the book, The Power of Perception, if you can pick one chapter that you want to share with our audience, what would that chapter be?
Spirituality. We each wrote different chapters, and we went with our interest. And I said that at first we were discussing the concept of religion, and we both agreed that we don't want to have a chapter on religion in a business book. However, how can you avoid discussing concepts that are so important to humans? So we did a chapter on spirituality, touching upon different concepts such as religion, touching upon concepts about different belief systems, and also how that impacts our perception, what we believe in, what we're taught to believe versus not, how we trust certain people, depending upon, you hear so many things nowadays with, is this my soulmate? Is this my, so those are the type of things that sometimes we actually are impacting our perception for the good or not so good by utilizing some of those concepts. So I think that is one of the chapters that we went back and forth on a little bit, whether to be included. And that's why I picked that one as my favorite one.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'll make sure that I read that one first.
Yeah.
Hey, Maya, I have two last questions for you for this conversation today, all right? And the first question is about thinking. My wife and I, we have been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think because deeply we believe that our thinking capability this day has been diminishing. So every chance that we talk to expert like you are, we ask this question. So Maya, over these years, how have you been helping you to improve your ability to think?
I always seek opinions of those who I don't agree with on the surface level.
Mm.
I'm constantly challenging myself by getting input from some individuals that perhaps I'm not seeing their standpoint. I'm not understanding fully their arguments, and I'm trying to learn from them by listening first and foremost.
Mm.
I think that nowadays the social media is really doing us a great disservice, because what's happening is we're constantly looking for the to solidify our own opinions, right?
Ah.
And when we solidify our own opinions, the algorithms are then helping us, quote unquote helping us. They're not helping us. They're constantly feeding us with the material of our preference.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is we're not expanding our horizons, we're not improving our thinking. Now, I'm not saying seek an opinion of someone who is so vastly different from you that you're going to end up in some sort of a horrific argument. I'm not saying that per se, but let's say you're having some sort of philosophical debate and you're not seeing something quite clearly as that other individual. That is the person you want to talk to. Because if you're consistently having a room full of people that agree with you, neither one of you are growing, and you no one is really thinking. All we're doing is validating each other's opinion.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's one of my advice.
How do you build that ability though? Because it's really hard to force us to listen to the opinion on the opposite side of the table.
You're improving your critical thinking and your emotional intelligence. You are not going to be able to advance your thinking without working your emotional intelligence as a muscle. So you definitely need to work on that muscle in order to improve it. Because if you go into any, this is where arguments take place. If you go into any, and challenging others in a manner where it doesn't end in an argument, asking them to solidify their opinions by providing more facts, and getting into those intellectual debates that are incredibly rewarding. Another thing is, of course, the obvious reading. I go through different phases. Right now, nowadays, I listen more versus read in a traditional sense of that word. But I go through different segments, different topics. And it is, I get a little obsessed, so I don't recommend this. I go through a segment of a particular topic for like 2 months. I remember a few years ago, absolutely nothing to do with my and those topics are never correlated to my work, by the way. That's what I want to say as well, because you're growing at work and you're learning new things at work, but then in your spare time what I like to do is I do something that has nothing to do. I went into this obsession with the ancestry DNA. So I learned everything there is to know about ancestry DNA, to the point where my friends tease me saying, "You're going to get another degree in ancestry DNA." I said, "I don't think there is such a thing as ancestry DNA degree, but if there was a certificate, I would pass it with flying colors because I was an expert." I was so fascinated. I was just like, wow, this is just amazing. Or I pick a historical segment, whether it's something in ancient history, whether it's something more recent, and then I study that particular. So that's what I do to improve my thinking. I don't think when you ask me that question, I don't think I do it with the mindset of improving my thinking. I'm doing it out of curiosity, going back to Diane's concept of curiosity.
Then the
By
question.
doing it, I'm improving my thinking. I don't think I went into anything with saying to myself, let me think better. I just naturally seek certain segments of knowledge and I'm expanding it within those. And by doing so, I'm improving my thinking.
Beautiful.
If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot for sharing that. So the last question is about the future. All right. So we knew a young version of Maya wanted to be a librarian. A career is no longer existing. Be a TV program announcer is also no longer existing. But along the way, the life come to full circle. You've been a teacher. You've been like a researcher, and the dream of your childhood still, surface, right? So, is there anything that Maya is working on, exciting, you want to share with me and the audience, so that we can celebrate with you in advance?
Well, I recently became a dean, and I can't even say that that was a dream of mine because of the fact that that was something that I was not even thinking of. So this was really a true dream job that I got, and I'm very thankful. So we are serving a very interesting segment of the population. We are serving adult students. We are
Mm.
serving students that are juggling multiple jobs, raising families, and pursuing a higher education. So we have a very important duty, and
Mm.
it's an honorable duty to fulfill. So right now, immediately, what I'm doing in my job is improving the curriculum, making sure that our students are successful in their path towards their educational journey. If you ask me on a personal level, I mean, I will always seek different research ventures.
Mm.
I'm still on a Fulbright tenure, so I'm currently working on a Fulbright project. It's in a planning phase at this point of time.
Mm.
I definitely want to go back now with COVID. Hopefully, I know we're still going back and forth, but hopefully, with COVID at least going behind us, for lack of better words, I hope to go back in the field and do more global research ventures.
Wow.
And then and I don't like to plan much. I told you this already. The
Yeah.
journey is more exciting this way. Something will come along, something new, something exciting, and I'm just open for the open for to experience whatever comes my way. So
Beautiful, beautiful. And Maya, I say that I have two last questions for you, but one question just came up, and I want to conclude the conversation with that question. Is that okay with you?
yeah, sure.
Alrighty. So if you look back at your whole life and career up until this point, if there's a few words that can summarize and describe your life and your work in a few words, what would those words be, Maya?
Persistence.
Persistence.
Yeah, I'm just
Persistence.
that's one word. I'm incredibly persistent, and don't give up.
Mm.
Life is a journey. Life is not easy. Life can take you by an incredible surprise. Life can take your breath away. Life can punch you, and 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 just keep trying.
Mm.
Just keep going. Don't give
Beautiful.
up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks a lot for sharing that. Persistent is the key word to summarize your life, and I it's a great honor to know you and to have you on our show, Maya. I really look forward to seeing you in person one day. And as I shared earlier, like if you ever go back to the research after the pandemic is over, right? Maybe it's the research in Asia for Vietnam or so, then we'll be having chance to meet a lot more. I'll be happy to see you in person, all right?
Thank you, and likewise, if you're here in the United States, let me know. Likewise, thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. You have a wonderful evening, and
You
I look
too.
forward to meeting you. Say hello to your family first.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, Maya.
Bye.